One record. All right, guys. This is a special episode of Front Porch Prog. I have with me the first guest ever on my channel, my friend and my mentor, Tom Curless from Curlessmania, and Curlessmania is running wild on Front Porch Prog today. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great, Trandon. Thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be your first guest, or like
Yeah.
outside official guest, I guess.
Well, things been going well with your channel.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's been good. It's been good. Been putting up some things here and there. I try to put a video up at least every week. So I've been doing a couple Beatles solo rankings. I did George Harrison and John Lennon recently, and did a Cars video recently with my friends David Cretan and Todd Evans. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I've been pretty busy on the channel, but I see you've been busy on your channel too.
Oh yeah, busy, busy. Got some new subscribers, and I actually hit 1,000 subscribers. It took me 8 years, but I did
You
it.
got it. You got it. You got
eight
it.
years and a lot of unfaithfulness to my channel, but I know
Yeah.
that a lot of my viewers love me to get to the point, so I'm going to get to the point. Today, we're going to be discussing some hot topics in music, not just prog, but in music in general. These could be controversial takes, but Tom and I will discuss it. We may debate. I don't know what'll happen, but there will be some topics we discuss, and we're both going to put each other, I guess, on the hot seat. So
Yes.
Tom came up with three, and I came up with three. So, Tom, because you're my guest, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. All right. Well, let me see. Should I go in order? Does it matter? Okay. Well, I'll start. I'll start with the first one I had. I'll just go in order. So my first one was, and this is sort of we started as sort of like a true or false thing, but like you said, we're going to end up discussing this. So we'll just
Yeah.
throw it out there and see what your reaction is. So my first one was that we're both Pink Floyd fanatics. We both love Pink Floyd. Okay. And I've always read that, like, whenever I read Pink Floyd books or biographies or whatever, they always dismiss Ummagumma. Like, oh, it was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. Like everyone did their own side, and that was just a mistake. It was a blip, and it was dumb. And it just always like they always end up like belittling Ummagumma. And I think that it was essential. I'm going to put it out there that I think it was essential to their evolution.
I
But
absolutely
what do
agree
you
with that.
think?
I agree, and I'm with you. I am a big fan of Ummagumma, and most of the Floyd fans that I'm around, they don't like it, and maybe they do sort of see it as a part of their stepping stone. But to me, I mean, people write this album off as unlistenable. I've heard one of my friends calls it sort of like a chaos, like a mess of noise and stuff, and you hear a lot of the critics talk about it being failed studio experiments, but to me, I feel like this is the exact album where things transitioned because they went from Piper at the Gates of Dawn to Saucer Full of Secrets, and they still had sort of that Sid influence. As a matter of fact, he even was on that album. But
Right, right,
then More was a soundtrack, and I feel like Pink Floyd really tried to step out of Sid's shadow on the second half of Ummagumma because they decided to separate and do their own thing, but still it was just this dive into the unknown,
right,
experiment.
right.
They had to somehow survive Sid Barrett's departure. And so I feel like by throwing each member sort of into the deep end of the pool, to write their own pieces, they sort of broke out of that cozy 60s psych pop, and you know, they learned how to expand. They learned how to create more and experiment more. And to me, without this experimentation on this album, they never would have been able to unlock, Atom Heart Mother or
Exactly,
Echo.
exactly. That's the way I feel. I feel like this is a stepping stone to Adam Hart Mother,
Right.
which we both love.
Oh yeah.
uh, and granted, I mean, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. I'm not saying it's a Pink Floyd map, but I do think that and some of the stuff is pretty out there. But that's what was great about Pink Floyd, right? That's what was awesome about them. They push the limits. They're always pushing, especially early in their career. They were really pushing the limits of
Hmm.
experimentation and sonic, playing, using the sonic template like across the board, like
Oh
everything,
yeah.
and
Yeah, for
using the
sure.
studio to its biggest, to its pushing the studio to its limits, right? And things like even things, it's funny that I listened back to this again and recently, and I really do like the Narrow Way quite a bit. Like that's
Oh, I
the
love
David,
it.
you know.
I love
Um,
it. That's my favorite piece on the entire album. And believe me, I love the live stuff, but the narrow way, and I always kind of, I don't know if you do this, but I always combine parts 1 through 3 as one big song. I mean, to me,
yeah,
it's just
same
one
here.
track.
Yeah, it's kind of one song, and even the Sisyphus stuff is kind of feels. I mean, it's a little bit different, but it kind of feels like one track too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's interesting, and I think it's a bold experiment, and yeah, and sometimes with experimentation, it's not always gonna land. We're gonna have, sometimes it's gonna fail. But I love the spirit of experimentation on this record, and I do think it's like an essential stepping stone to things like Adam Hart Mother, which is next.
I
So
think you and I agree totally on this. We probably will have people that will not agree. And even the
we'll have
band,
dissenters on this one. Yeah.
yeah, even the band have dismissed this album. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they call it rubbish, or I was just mucking around or whatever. But I
Yeah.
mean, even they have dismissed the album. The album's always dismissed. I got in trouble the first time that I ranked Pink Floyd and put it online. I'm such a mark for these older albums by Pink Floyd.
Right.
And
Right.
you hear the popular albums so much, you just kind of get burnt out with it.
Totally. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
remember ranking and I just got, oh my goodness, I got this one guy just, he's like, you're terrible, I'm never gonna watch your channel, you're an idiot, this kind of deal. I had ranked Ummagumma over Wish You Were Here.
I
But you
love it.
know me, I've got to stir the pot sometimes.
I know that's hilarious. Oh, are you crazy? Are you
Yeah,
nuts? That
yeah.
is so funny.
But I said, just hear me out. I said, this was my explanation to him.
Right.
I said, Shine On is a masterpiece, obviously. I
Hmm.
said, I feel like the other three are sort of like stock Floyd songs. And then Ummagumma was like their ultimate experimentation. But he
Yeah.
wasn't buying it.
He wasn't buying it. But I
No.
love that you were stirring that pot. You were like
Yeah.
stirring it up. I love
But when I
that.
re-ranked Pink Floyd, I did the right thing.
Hey, you're experimenting with the ranking. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're
Yeah,
experimenting with album ranking.
that's
So
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So all
But
right.
no, I
So
think we'd both agree on this one. Ummagumma is essential.
yeah, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it's like you said that I read, all the band members were dissing it, like saying, "Oh, it was a mistake and we shouldn't have done it." I'm like, I don't know about that. Let's hold on, whoa, like that's a little
Oh
much.
yeah.
I think it was an important record.
Oh yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah, yeah. So,
Well,
but your
uh,
first one,
we'll move to the next one, and I think I'm gonna keep Floyd in the forefront here.
okay,
So we'll tackle my one on Floyd, I'll call it. So,
right.
and this is the statement: Roger Waters needed David Gilmour more than David needed Roger.
This is a hot take. This might cause some trouble,
So
but
let me explain
go ahead.
myself,
You
and
go. You
then
go
and then
first. Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you can tackle me here.
All right.
Okay. I feel, and everybody knows that Roger was, he was undeniably the lyrical architect of the band, and
Right.
he's the one that came out with all the concepts. He was the one that wrote the songs. We know this, and to me, I give him full credit for these ideas and for the lyrics. And Roger is a genius. I'm not denying this. But to me, lyrics doesn't, lyrics on a piece of paper that don't fill arenas.
Right.
And, transcendent, sweeping guitar solos, Rick Wright's lush keyboards, the cinema of Pink Floyd together, that's what fills arenas. And without
Right.
David Gilmour's expressive, lead guitar work and his writing in general, his warm vocals, I love his vocals. Um, without his melodic instincts, I feel that Waters, um, we'll say, socio-political rants, they would have sounded more like a spoken word over acoustic strumming with, some background music in the background, exactly what you hear when you hear his solo albums. So
Right.
I
Right.
feel like that would have been what Roger Waters was without David Gilmour. Now, you can look on the other side and, well, David Gilmour would have been nothing without Roger Waters, and that may be true.
Right.
However, I will say that a momentary lapse of reason, whether you like it or not, and the division bell, whether you like it or not, they proved that Pink Floyd still could fill arenas and they could go to the top of the charts. I love the Division Bell, and I do love some tracks from A Momentary Lapse of Reason, especially since they did the 2019 remix of it. But
Mhm.
to me, I think that proved that Pink Floyd could stand on their own. They weren't as deep and they weren't as conceptual without Roger, but they absolutely, to me, were able to live without Roger. Roger, to me, is mostly just an angry guy shouting at the wall, without David Gilmour and company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say that the prime example is you listen to I bought the it was like a deluxe version of The Wall, and
Right.
it had famously had, Roger wrote The Wall, like wrote it, and he always says, I wrote The Wall. It's like,
Right.
okay, you did, but like you listen to his demos and it's like
Oh, yeah.
that's nowhere near the record. That's
Yeah.
not even close.
That's right.
So to me, it's just funny because there was one thing I read where Dick Gilmour said something about The Wall. Somebody said, "Oh, that was Roger's baby," and that was Roger. He's like, "My fingerprints are all over that album,"
That's
and it
true.
is true. It is he. There's no. He's like, I would put my. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something to that effect that I will die on that hill that I was a huge part of The Wall, and
Oh, yeah.
without me there, it wouldn't be the same record.
It wasn't.
And,
And when I hear The Wall, yes, I hear Roger, of course,
right.
but I hear Comfortably Numb. I
Yeah.
hear Run Like Hell. I
Right.
hear the
Goodbye
tracks
Blue Sky.
Goodbye Blue Sky. I
Yeah.
hear, Mama Loves a Baby, David Gilmour,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
so to me, that's one thing that really upsets me about Roger is he thinks, I don't want to get on for a Roger rant, but
Right.
he
Right.
thinks that lyrics are everything, and they're
Right.
very important, but
Yes.
they're not everything. And so to me, I feel like he has taken this to the extreme. I've seen Roger Waters in concert more than I've seen anybody.
Right.
And I've
Right.
witnessed, in 1999, he actually had a show, a music. The last one that I went to, or the one prior to the last one I went to, was awesome. He had the Battersea Power Station. He played Animals. Great show. And I don't care about, his politics or whatever. Hey, everybody's got a right to, say
Sure.
whatever they want to say, whether you agree or you don't agree. I
Right.
love
Right.
Roger and I love the music, but this last one that I went to, it was a lot of just, and I know he's getting older, but it was a lot of sort of spoken word. And then what he did, God forgive me here, what he did to Dark Side of the Moon by redoing it is just blasphemy against Pink
I don't know
Floyd.
what he's doing. I have no what he's doing with that. I don't get
Yeah.
it. I don't
But
get it.
but this is coming from a die-hard, Pink Floyd nutcase fan, you know.
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly. And I think you made a video about this, and check it out on his channel on Front Porch Prog, that you made a video about Roger, and you touch on all these topics,
Yeah.
and I think the main thing was like I liked Roger when he's a little more mellow and younger.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when he worked with the band, it was magic. I mean,
It
I
was.
always say like when Gilmour and Waters work together, it's chef's kiss. Like because it's almost like the mind and the heart working together, you
That's it.
know?
That's it. And
So
Rick Wright was the soul. You
yes,
know, so
exactly. Thank you. That's
yeah.
perfect. Yes. Yes. Because Rick Wright was essential too. He was an
Yeah.
essential part of it too.
Yeah.
So something there was magic when those four guys played together. There was something that happened, and all of them brought something. And when you can hear it on the solo records. I mean, I love David Gilmour, but you listen
Mhm.
to like his solo records, his self-titled and About Face and On an Island. They're great. They're good records, but they're not. They don't with Rogers. It's like the salt and the sweet and the
Yeah.
salty and sweet together. It just
That's
works,
it.
you
That's
know?
it. It's
So,
perfect. And you know, I know it's a hot take to say that Roger needed Dave more. I think they both needed each other,
right,
you know.
right.
But
Yeah.
essentially, I feel like Dave could have become a musician that was appreciated, you know, at least for his musicianship, whereas Roger would have become more of a, you know, I mean, I don't know what you would call it, sort of like I could see him like in a Barnes and Noble, you know, doing poetry night or something. I don't know.
Right, right, exactly. He's the artiste, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Whereas, but there's the thing is, like you said, in '87 they were playing stadiums, so and that was without
true.
Roger. So
Yeah,
I mean, they did fine. They did very well without him, with Dave fronting the band. So
yeah.
that's anyway.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we'll move on to the next one, and you're up.
All right, I am up. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna switch it up to Genesis, and I'm gonna say that mine was Phil Collins is not solely responsible for Genesis transformation into mainstream music. I mean, people always say, "Oh, Phil Collins ruined Genesis and Phil Collins killed it." And Phil Collins, it's like, no, 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 no. Hold on, time out. Like they were first of all, Genesis was moving slowly and steadily towards more mainstream. Like you could even say, starting Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering had Your Own Special Way on it, which was kind of a love ballad by Rutherford. Duke had some like, I mean, they were slowly moving towards, and then there were three had some, Hey, There's a Snowman is kind of a poppy song,
Yes,
and you know what I mean? There's all these poppy songs, even in the '70s, they're just slowly moving towards that. And Banks and Rutherford were just as they like to write a poppy song too. So it
that's right.
wasn't just Collins. That's all I'm saying. That's my point.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I know everybody's going to think we're just like that. We've gotten together and we're agreeing all the time with each other,
Right.
but no, I have to, and I wouldn't have known this, Tom. I probably would have argued with you had I not read something about a month ago, and it was, you know, people blaming Phil Collins for turning Genesis sort of radio friendly, you know,
Right.
this hit machine.
Yep.
Um, that and I bought into that. I was the one that bought into that too for a while, but then when I was reading about, you know, the ambition of Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford and how they were pushing this, they were
Right.
pushing this shift together, and people don't realize how much control Tony had over the band. You
Exactly.
know,
Exactly right.
he
Yes.
had a lot of control over. I'm not saying, you know, he was a dictator or told him what to do, but you know he did have a lot of control over the band, and I feel like Phil was, you know, he's very charismatic, and he proved he could be a front man. He proved that they could, you know, execute this vision of Genesis, and it and this is the other thing that I don't understand. You know, people say they sold out or whatever. Has anybody listened to Invisible Touch? I mean,
Right.
that is a progressive pop album.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
some moments. It's like art pop. It's like
right.
it's not straight ahead pop music, you
Yeah, they
know?
didn't lose their prog chops, you know,
Right.
because now that they've got a hit, It's
Right.
like, no, they're prog. If you go listen to Invisible Touch, that is a progressive album. It's just progressive pop. And
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
Phil turned it around to the point where, you know, this is my theory, and you can tell me what you think of my theory. And I've preached it several times on my channel that complexity married to accessibility is magical.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
exactly what Phil and Tony and Mike did with Genesis.
Right. Absolutely. And they did it brilliantly. I mean, and to your point, Tony Banks doesn't do things he doesn't want to do.
That's right.
So, you know what I mean? So you just go, this guy he was into it. I think he liked the fact that they were getting more popular, and they ran with that. And like to your point, I mean, Invisible Touch has Domino on it, and it's a three-part song, and then it's got the Brazilian on it, which is a cool instrumental. And like I remember one time I was listening to Tonight with my daughter, and we were
Hmm.
listening to that song, and it goes on. There's like a radio edit version, and then there's the album version. The album version's
Right.
like pretty long.
Oh
And
yeah,
she's
yeah,
like, Dad, is this song still going? I said, yeah, it's still
yeah,
going. I mean, and that's Invisible Touch. So I mean, you know, something to be said for that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
really enjoy. Well, it's like you said, Trick of the Tail and those albums afterward. I really enjoyed Genesis with Steve Hackett, you
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
know. But I admire Genesis after Hackett left. I will listen to any Genesis. I don't care, Gabriel era, the Phil Collins with Hackett, Phil Collins without Hackett. I'll listen to any Genesis era, but I really do think that the era of Collins and when Hackett was still there,
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
magical era. It
Magic.
really is.
Yes. Those two records, man, Wind
Yeah.
and Wuthering and Thick Trick
Trick
of
of
the
the
Tail
Tail.
is
Yeah,
classic. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I get a lot of flack because it took me so long to get into Gabriel's Genesis. And
Right.
people are different. I've heard people say, "Well, I can't get into King Crimson, or I can't get into
Right.
Vandergraaf Generator." I
Yep.
couldn't get into Genesis for a while because I can't stand like whimsy, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it just irks me, and the flowers and all this stuff. Supper's ready. I'm like, how is this song great? I'm listening to like Close to the Edge and Tarkus, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. But it took me a while, to get into it. But I really appreciate all eras of Genesis now.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm the same way. I mean, everyone knows. I think I've made it pretty clear. I'm a huge Genesis guy. I
Yeah.
love Genesis. So I've loved them my whole life. So, but the one band for me that I'm still trying hard with and I'm still working on it is Gentle Giant. That's the
Oh yeah.
band that I'm having more trouble with than any of the prog bands. That's for some reason I keep trying. I'm trying.
I
I'm still
understand.
trying.
I understand. It's so strange how people are though, because I remember listening to Octopus. And I was like, I like that. That's a pretty good album. And then Freehand. I was sold on Freehand. I loved it. And maybe I loved it just because it was so different.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
never hear
It
that
is
kind of.
different. Yeah.
Yeah,
For
but I
sure.
can totally understand why they are difficult to, get into.
Yeah, and I mean, In a Glass House is the one that I'm really kind of the most into right now. That seems because
Okay.
they re-released it, I guess, and I've been
Yeah.
listening to the re-release, and I'm kind of getting into that record, so I'm
Oh
working
yeah.
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great album.
yeah,
All right, we'll move on to the next one here, and mine is we'll stay in the prog era. We're not all of these are going to be prog, but we'll kind of stay in the prog era. A band I just brought up, King Crimson, and so
yeah.
my statement is 80s King Crimson was just as prog as 70s, and Adrian saved them from being a dustbin nostalgia act.
Okay.
So
Go
so
ahead, make your
so
case.
here's my case. So to me, the idea that progressive King Crimson died in the 80s is not true.
Not true.
Um, I believe that's revisionism. Discipline, to me, proved that true prog's about constant forward motion
Yep.
and experimentation and mutation, even. not rehashing Mellotrons and capes. You know,
Right. Right.
it's progressive, you know. So to me, you know, Adrian brought this sort of twitchy, you know, like new wave energy, sort of like gosh, I can't think of the guy's name from the Talking Heads now. What's his name?
But David Byrne.
David Byrne. No, yeah, I mean, you know, Adrian Blue, he brought this sort of Norman Bates quality, you know, to it.
Yes. Right.
But I mean, the vocal versatility, the interlocking guitar work with, you know, with Robert Fripp at the time,
Oh,
and to me, it just it dragged King Crimson kicking and screaming out of the '70s into the '80s, and to me, I feel like Discipline pioneered a different era of prog. Now, I feel like Adrian sort of injected pop, you know, sensibilities, I guess you
yes.
would say,
Yes.
to it. And but I feel like Fripp's King Crimson would have choked on its own self-importance. You know,
Right.
it hadn't have been
Right.
for Adrian. Adrian just sort of, you know, he gave it some fun. He brought fun to King Crimson.
Right.
And, you
Right.
know, otherwise, I feel like they would have been sort of just a nostalgia act had they continued. I do have a very controversial take on one of my videos about which album I really think is the masterpiece of the King Crimson '80s.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, is it, can I jump in?
Jump in.
All right. All right. So I'll tell you, I love King Crimson. I love the 80s King Crimson. I've gone on record saying that's my favorite King Crimson because it's the first one I got into. It's like, you know, it's almost like your first girlfriend or your first kid, you know, whatever it is, you
Oh
just
yeah.
remember very fondly. And it's like, you know, I remember a buddy of mine, his brother had I think it was Beat. I think it was, and he was playing it, and I was like, "What is that?" Like I could hear it in the other room, and I was like, What is
Yeah.
that music?" You know, you hear that doo 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 doo
Yep.
doo doo doo, and you're like, "Oh," and the interlocking guitars, you're like, what is happening right now?" And like you said, Adrian Belew really brought in a lot of energy, a lot of kind of almost like you said, almost like manic energy, and
Mhm.
he brought some accessibility as well
Yeah.
because it was the 80s. I mean, it was you had to
Yeah.
change with the times and they had to
That's
change
true.
with the 80s. And they did, but they did it in their own cool way, right? They did it in their own terms, as Fripp always does, right? So, but it's hard to say, right? Because I love as much as I love 80s Crimson, there's all these different phases of King Crimson, right? So you have those like first two records that I really love, like with Greg Lake on vocals. I'm like, love that. And like I love those first two albums. And then I love like Lark's Tongues and Aspic and Red. Like
Hmm.
those with Wetton and on vocals and Bruford on drums. Like, oh, those are great too, right? So
Yeah.
like those are it's kind of crazy that they ended on Red. Like Red is so
Yeah.
amazing. And then they
It is.
stopped. It's like, what? How did you stop after that album? But they did the 80s Crimson though is like a whole different animal. And I
Yeah.
think it's awesome. So I don't know if I'm disagreeing with you or agreeing with you. I'm just saying this King Crimson's so hard to break down because there's so
Yeah.
many different eras. And but I love the 80s stuff. I'm not sure if they would have become, and I like you're saying, they that lineup brought them
Yeah.
back. Like they would have been if they didn't do that. You're right. They would have been this nostalgia like pro. Remember the Prague King Crimson from that
Yeah.
70 way back in the 70s? They made it like contemporary and now, which is
That's
really
true.
cool.
That's
You
true.
know?
And to me, you brought up how you loved '80s King Crimson. The first video that I ever watched on your channel was that one.
Yes.
It was where
Yes.
you had all the '80s King Crimson, and I remember commenting on it, and I thought, I love this. I love this discussion because nobody wants to talk about these three albums. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like. And so when I saw that, I was just I watched that video over and over. You probably got 100 views just off of me. So
Hello.
I just watched that over and over, and I loved it so much. And I was like, man, I love this guy, and you know, the discussions he's having with these people. And so that sort of inspired me at the time to come back. And
Mhm.
then when, you know, after you and I had some collaborations and stuff, and I just thought, you know what? I'm coming back. I'm coming back and I'm gonna do the best I can. And so yeah, but that album was yeah, that was or I mean
I mean,
that show rather that
that
you did,
show.
that episode,
Yeah,
yeah.
was that with Eric Porter, I think? Was that right?
I believe it
I think,
was, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And because we were talking about the show, we saw Beat too. We saw them live, and then we were talking about the live show because they were doing all the 80s stuff. And
Right.
that show was just like blew my mind because they were doing all the 80s stuff. It was so cool. It was awesome. So, but yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Uh you got the next
I'm
one,
up.
I believe.
I'm up. So let's okay. So this is a good transition. So my last one was that I gotta read it. What was it exactly? It was like that something to do with Brian Eno helped to secure Robert Fripp's legacy. I don't know
Yeah.
if I
It was I think you said something like Brian Eno helped to secure Robert Fripp's legacy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, something like that because there was, to your point, before all these 80s records happened, there was like, he was like kind of doing his own thing. He made Exposure, he did a solo record, he did like, he was kind of collaborating with some people. But Brian Eno, like nobody really talks much about Brian Eno in the prog world. And it's like, he did No Pussyfooting with Fripp. He did, is it Northern Star, I think is the name of the album. They did like two collab albums and where it was just Eno and Fripp. And then
Yeah.
they did and then Eno brought him in on Heroes for David Bowie, like flew him in, called him up, said, "You got to come to Berlin and record on this awesome record with David Bowie. I'm working with him." And he did this amazing guitar thing on Heroes. And then and Fripp continued to work with Bowie throughout. He was on Fashion, I think was another song he was on.
Hmm.
And then Brian Eno brought him in to play on Talking Heads records. He plays on E Zimbra on Fear of Music. All of a sudden you hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, oh, that sounds just like that's Fripp, man.
Yeah.
You can't, it's like you can't miss it. And Eno brought him in. So he was keeping him like really relevant during this time of sort of like when King Crimson was kind of put to sleep for a while. And I just don't think people talk about that a lot. So I just felt like I'd bring it up. I don't know.
Yeah. And to me, I feel like I think you got a lot more knowledge of that than I do, but to me, I feel like if Eno hadn't have pulled him into this sort of avant-garde, uh, I'll call it the avant-garde mainstream, you
Right.
know, I feel like he sort of exposed Robert Fripp's Frippertronics to a massive art rock audience, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly
it's
right.
like it never would have touched a King Crimson record, but I think Eno sort of translated his what would you say, technical wizardry
Right. Right.
into
Yeah.
sort
Like
of
you
like
said, the
a modern
Frippertronics.
sonic art. Yeah,
Yeah, no, and I think Eno was a fan of Robert Fripp. I think he was a fan. Like, I just love what you do, man. I love that you do these weird things. And like, he would
yeah,
just bring him. Oh, let's call Robert Fripp and bring him in. Like, he'll do
yeah,
something really
really.
weird.
It's
Um,
strange because Robert Fripp was not I mean, not Robert Fripp, Brian Eno was not someone that I had really gotten into for a while. I'd heard of him and I'd read about him, in some of these books, but I never really got into him. And
mhm.
then I listened to, I think it was the music for airports,
Yes. Yep. That's beautiful.
and I just
Yes.
got hooked to the album. I was like,
It's sort of hypnotic. It's very
yeah,
hypnotic.
it was like crazy. So
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know,
really
but
not cool. It's like beautiful and hypnotic. That's what I always call it. Um, but it's
but
it's
now,
cool.
what is his most popular one? I forget is it
The
Another
ones that
Green
the ones
World?
that I think they're most popular that he did like under his name are Before and After Science and Another Green World are the two big
Another
big
Green
ones.
World. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah,
Phil Collins plays drums on them, and a lot of guys from Brand X are on those records, and yeah, so yeah, they're
yeah.
pretty cool.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, so that I would just we don't have to keep talking about that. I just figured I'd bring that up. So
Okay, the next subject that we will hold on one second
that's
here.
the last one, right? We got one more.
I believe it is. Yep.
Oh,
Hold on one second. Um, okay. Let me pull up here. Okay, so mine is going to be this is totally out of Prague. Okay, so we're off the Prague wagon here,
Raw frog for a minute.
and I'm going to be discussing metal for a second.
Okay. Okay.
So my statement will be stop revising history. The Black Album made Metallica, not Master of Puppets.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
So Master of Puppets has become sort of this sacred cow, for we'll say metal purists. But I
Mhm.
feel like if you're really true to what happened, the Black Album is the undisputed masterpiece because it's what transformed Metallica from this underground sort of thrash novelty band that they were in the 80s. And people think, oh, Metallica, there's some sort of historical revisionism going on in music, that Metallica was big in the 80s. They weren't really
Right.
that big in the 80s.
No, they weren't.
And they were sort of like, if I remember, there was I had a next door neighbor who was a kid, and he lived with his mother, and he's a skater, and Metallica, that's where I heard Metallica from. I'd never even heard of Metallica. And then
Right.
he introduced me to him, and I did enjoy Metallica, but they weren't that popular in the 80s. They got popular after the Black Album. Bob Rock is the one that brought Metallica into the mainstream. He's the one that produced that album, and it is an incredibly produced album. The heavy, the heaviness of the Black Album is all Bob Rock you know
Right.
and to me, it, without Enter Sandman and Sad But True and these songs like that dominating the stadium, I mean the airwaves, Metallica wouldn't be in a stadium.
Right.
Metallica would
Right.
have remained this niche 80s speed metal band. And I'm not saying they would have never evolved, because they did evolve, obviously, but the reason they evolved was because they released the Black Album. And to
Right.
me, the Black Album is the masterpiece for Metallica. And I will die on that hill.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about Metallica. I'm not that far into it. Like kind of like with you, it's like I know them somewhat, but I don't know a lot about them. But Enter Sandman just like blew them up. I mean, that was the song that was like all over MTV. I mean, they did have a little bit going on with geez, sorry. Hold on. They had a little bit going on with Injustice for All. I mean, there was a little bit of like I think they had there was a song called One. Is that right? No, what
Yes.
was the album?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
And that was their first album. I mean, not album, I'm sorry, first video,
First video,
MTV
right?
video.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
was their,
that was a video, and I remember seeing that on MTV, and they started to get some momentum. But even that record, it was like the Black Album was really what put them on the like they
yeah.
took off for the Black Album.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely did.
So,
And
so
I feel like there's a lot of, like I said, historical revisionism as far as music's concerned. And a lot of that's brought in by, um, well, the TV show Stranger Things,
yes,
you
yes,
know.
yeah,
Eh, So to me, who was popular in the 80s? Motley Crue.
right,
You know,
right,
I mean, but
yes,
you're not going to see that because that's not cool.
right,
It was cool
right,
then, it's not cool anymore, you know.
right, right.
But Metallica sort of has that. They were cool in the 80s.
Hmm.
They just weren't popular. But
Right.
they're cool now, and they've been cool for a long time. They just sort of have that Teflon, you know, about them. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were really like a cult. They had like a heavy cult in the 80s. Like, but
yeah,
it was still a cult. It wasn't like mainstream yet. But the people that loved them were like, oh my God, Metallica. Like I
yeah,
remember there were a couple guys in school that were like, Metallica. And I was like, I don't even know who that is. But they
yeah,
were like, they were ready to die on that hill. I was like, okay, what, what?
yeah,
What's master? What?
yeah,
Puppets? Okay.
really.
I didn't know
But
that until so I got into it later. But at the time, I was like, "What?
mm,
Who's this band? Metallica?" You know. So
Okay, so we went through our six topics. Now, I want to pull something out of the hat. Tom did not know about this, so I'm
Okay.
just going to go ahead and you must choose one to die on that hill, and then you must choose one to disagree with if you had to, and then I'll go.
Oh my God. Okay. To die on the hill, I would say I would die on the Genesis hill because that's the one that for me, like I know for sure it wasn't
Oh
just
yeah.
Phil. I know it was the other guys just as much as Phil, so I know
Yeah.
for sure that's I would die on that hill.
Okay.
Uh, but to disagree with, uh, jeez, oh man, um, um, oh geez, I'm gonna disagree with. Well, I mean, the I was the one thing I guess when you went a little too far with the dustbin nostalgia act. That's the part I was like I wouldn't that was I couldn't really ride with that. That was a
I
little
I
that
have
was too far for me.
I have a tendency to push the push the limit.
But you have to do that. You have to get views. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so the dustbin King Crimson.
I don't think they would have been a dustbin nostalgia. That's
Maybe
what I'll
that
say.
was a little too far.
Yeah.
With me, I'll die on the Black Album Metallica Hill.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
I just feel like no one could argue with that. I mean, that's just that album made them who they are.
Right.
It just
Right.
did. And as far as the disagree, well, I can't disagree with myself. So,
Right. Right.
well, I
So
could. That'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it?
it would be weird, but yeah, you could do it. But uh,
Um, Gosh,
I can take it, man. I can take it.
uh, I just agree with everything you said. But I have to. Okay, so I have to choose.
You have to pick one.
I'm gonna go with the safe one here and say I might shock you. I'm gonna disagree. Even though I agree, if I have to
Right.
disagree, I'm gonna say Ummagumma
Okay.
that they could have jumped from say more to God, I don't want to
They could
say
have
that because
skipped it. Could have skipped it.
don't
Yeah.
believe it, but I
Right.
believe, they possibly could have jumped from more to the Adam Hart mother and without Ummagumma.
Right. Right. So what if like here's another what if. What if Ummagumma like they got rid of the live right stuff? People would really desecrate that record if there was no
Oh,
live.
oh, it would be buried at the bottom of every ranking, and it almost is anyway.
It almost is anyway. Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, I mean, I ranked it like number eight, and
Right.
but it's at the bottom almost of
Most people
everybody's
put at the
ranking.
bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
most people say it kind of sucks except for the live disc.
yeah.
So
But you're right. If there wasn't no live disc and it was just the instrumental, I mean not the instrumental, the experimentation of you know, the guys,
right.
it would absolutely be buried. I feel like it would be buried even deeper
Further.
than I buried Endless River.
Right,
You
exactly.
know.
It would be junked in with Endless River.
Yeah.
That's what would happen. Yeah.
And Endless River was one of those albums that when I listened to it, I was so excited. And then when I listened to it, I was like, doesn't do much for me. Maybe I should listen to it as one whole piece.
Right. Right.
But it doesn't flow that great,
Doesn't
you know.
flow.
And so to me, the more I listened to it, the more I was like, this was a money grab, you know.
Yeah.
And they could have honored Rick's memory so much better. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was disappointed with Endless River when it came out. I remember I was so excited to get it, and I was like, "Oh my God, Endless River!" I couldn't wait to get it,
Yeah.
and I put it on, and I was like, "Eh, well, it's okay."
Yeah. They should have made another Adam Hart mother.
Yeah, it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
It has moments. If you listen to it, there's moments you go, "Oh, that's kind of cool," or "Oh, that's kind of cool,but it's like it's kind of disjointed.
Oh
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not like
Yeah, for sure. Well, Tom, I really appreciate you joining me on my channel for the first visitor ever. So you're officially in the FPP Hall of Fame now. But
Well,
uh,
thanks
but
for
no,
having me, Trent. It's really
if
been fun. It's been a great
if
time.
you want to before we go, if you want to promote anything on your channel, I'm going to put your channel in the description, obviously, and give you a shout out. Everybody go check out Curlessmania, Tom's channel. I will have his channel in the description of this video when it comes out. And just go check him out. He is an inspiration to me and got some great content.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Trent. I appreciate that. Yeah, just that's all I can say is go check out Curless Mania. You might find some stuff you like. So that's all
Yep.
I can say. Yep.
All right. Well, I hope you have a
All
great
right.
evening.
Thanks. Thanks, Trent. Take care, man. See
All
you.
right. Bye.